Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel NPA Discovery. Today's story is one you may think you know, until you don't. It's the story of a man who spent his entire career making people laugh, yet carried a private burden so heavy that even his closest friends barely understood it. This is the story of Bob Denver, the man the world loved as Gilligan, the goofy castaway with a sailor's cap, an innocent smile, and a heart of pure gold. But behind that light-hearted image lived a human being who struggled, suffered, and sacrificed far more than he ever admitted publicly. Before we dive in, if you enjoy deep, meaningful biographies that blend truth, emotion, and reflection, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support gives us the drive to continue uncovering stories that deserve to be told with dignity and humanity. My honest opinion before we begin. The title of this video, The Heartbreaking Secret He Hid Behind the Laughter, is not an exaggeration. I genuinely believe that Bob Denver represents one of the most misunderstood figures in American television history. Most people remember him as the bumbling Gilligan, but very few understand the remarkable resilience, private suffering, and profound kindness behind the character. And even fewer know just how far he went to protect others from the truth he lived with. I agree with the title because Bob Denver didn't just hide a secret, he shielded the world from it. Not out of shame, but because he believed his purpose was to bring joy, not sorrow. And to me, that choice alone makes him far more heroic than any character he ever played. The early years, where a shy boy began his journey. Bob Denver's life began not on a stage, not in a studio, and certainly not on a tropical island with palm trees made of plastic, but in the quiet corners of an ordinary American home. Born Robert Osborne Denver on January 9, 1935, he wasn't the loudest child in the room. He wasn't the class clown. He wasn't the natural performer people assume he was. In fact, Bob was shy, painfully shy, the kind of boy who would hide behind books and hobbies rather than step into the spotlight. It's ironic, isn't it, that one of the most recognizable faces in television history began life trying desperately not to be noticed. His mother often described him as gentle, quiet, even dreamy. A boy who was more comfortable reading comic strips or tinkering with small projects than running with neighborhood kids. Observers say that Bob's natural kindness was evident even then, an introverted tenderness that later became the foundation of Gilligan's innocence. But life has a way of nudging us in directions we never planned. And Bob's first nudge came when he least expected it. Loyola Marymount, where everything shifted. When Denver enrolled at Loyola Marymount University, he did so with no intention of becoming an actor. But a couple of campus plays changed everything. Bob stepped onto a stage for the first time, and froze. Literally froze. His stage fright was so severe that he would shake, sweat, and forget entire lines. But instead of running away, Bob did something remarkable. He kept trying. Every failed line. Every nervous laugh. Every awkward performance. They all built the foundation of a career that would soon reach millions. This is one of the rare moments where Bob's natural shyness actually shaped his success. Because every time he panicked, he learned how to use his vulnerability as a tool. He transformed discomfort into charm. And that charm would become what made Gilligan unforgettable. It was at Loyola that Bob met Dwayne Hickman, a fellow student who would later change Bob's life forever. Hickman became the lead actor in a TV series called The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, and he made sure Denver got a shot at auditioning. Not because Bob asked. Not because Bob pushed. But because Bob inspired people with his humility. Sometimes, greatness comes not from ambition, but from character. The draft, and a moment that could have ended everything. 3 episodes into his rising fame, reality crashed in. Bob was drafted into the United States Army. In an instant, his career, his future, and his newfound identity were in jeopardy. The show replaced him quickly, uncertain if he'd ever return. For most actors, such a moment would have destroyed their career before it even began. But fate, for the second time, stepped in. Bob was medically classified as 4F, unfit for service due to a neck injury. He returned after missing only 1 episode. But in that brief moment of uncertainty, Bob Denver learned a lesson he would carry through every triumph and tragedy: fame can vanish at any moment. Family, humility, and values are the only things you truly keep. And life was about to test that philosophy again, on a scale no one could have imagined. The road to Gilligan begins. If Dobie Gillis gave Bob Denver his first taste of public affection, it also taught him a truth that would follow him for the rest of his life: fame is a blessing only when you're strong enough to survive it. Bob was still the shy kid from Brownwood, Texas, even as Maynard G. Krebs became a cultural phenomenon. Fans adored him, critics praised him, and magazines began labeling him television's most charming accidental star. But success never changed him. If anything, it humbled him. Crew members recalled that Bob was always the one helping clean up props, apologizing if he bumped into someone, or writing personal thank you notes to assistants who helped him rehearse. He treated fame like a fragile gift that could vanish at any moment, perhaps because he had already come so close to losing it during his draft scare. This humility made him unique in an industry famous for ego. And it's this same humility that caught the attention of a young producer with an idea so bizarre, so risky, and so unpredictable that most actors would never have dared to accept it. But Bob Denver wasn't like most actors. He had quiet courage, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. And that courage would lead him to the role of a lifetime. The dark side of iconic fame. Gilligan's Island turned Bob Denver into one of the most recognizable faces in America. With that recognition came an avalanche of attention, children tugging on his clothes, adults shouting his name in grocery stores, reporters demanding interviews, fans swarming him during family outings. Bob wasn't built for that level of exposure. His quiet personality made fame feel like a storm he was constantly trying to outrun. More than once, he would walk into a restaurant and hear the same joke: "Hey look, it's Gilligan, don't knock anything over." People weren't trying to be cruel, but they didn't understand the burden of being reduced to a caricature of himself. And that reduction became heavier every year. Producers rarely offered him serious roles. Casting directors struggled to imagine him outside of Gilligan's sailor hat. Hollywood executives openly said he was too recognizable, too goofy, or too closely tied to one image. Bob wasn't just typecast. He was trapped inside the character he created. The joy he brought to millions slowly became the cage that limited his future. And yet, he never complained. He loved his fans. He loved the joy he brought into the world. He loved the laughter that followed the show long after it ended. But privately, the struggle was real. And the secret Bob carried was becoming heavier. The secret Bob never talked about. As the spotlight intensified, Bob Denver quietly carried a personal burden that almost no one truly understood. His son, Colin, had severe autism, a condition far less understood in the 1970s than it is today. Autism at that time came with stigma, misunderstanding, and virtually no public support systems. While Hollywood demanded Bob's time, energy, and attention, his family needed even more. And Bob made a decision that defined the rest of his life: he chose family over fame. He chose love over career. He chose to protect his son, no matter the cost. For decades, Bob turned down roles, lost opportunities, and faded from the public eye because he was devoting himself to caring for Colin. He did so without applause. Without announcements. Without press releases. Because Bob believed that good deeds meant the most when done quietly. This was the heartbreaking secret behind the laughter: he wasn't just stepping away from Hollywood. He was sacrificing his career to be the father his son needed. People often wondered what happened to him after Gilligan's Island, why he didn't become a bigger star, why he faded into obscurity. Nobody knew the truth: Bob Denver wasn't disappearing. He was serving. And to me, that makes him one of the most honorable men in Hollywood history. The final battle, illness and a heartbreaking goodbye. In 2005, Bob Denver was diagnosed with cancer of the larynx, the very instrument that had given his characters life, emotion, and laughter. The irony was cruel, almost cinematic. The man who dedicated his life to bringing joy with his voice suddenly found himself struggling to speak. But Bob faced the diagnosis with remarkable calm. Throughout his treatment, he refused to be pitied, and he did not want the public to see him as a victim. To him, life had always been about gratitude, not hardship. But behind closed doors, Dreama stayed by his side as Bob's condition worsened. She watched the man who had been her rock grow weaker, quieter, and exhausted. Yet even then, he never stopped expressing concern for his family and for Colin. He worried not about himself, but about whether they would be okay. On September 2, 2005, Bob Denver passed away at the age of 70. The world lost Gilligan. But Dreama and Colin lost the gentle heart who had always kept their small world steady. The news rippled through Hollywood with shock. But perhaps the most powerful reactions came from the generations of fans who grew up with him. People wrote letters saying Gilligan helped them survive childhood trauma. Parents said Bob's character brought joy to their homes during difficult times. Grandparents said his show was the one thing that united old and young in laughter. Bob never knew the full reach of his impact. He never imagined he changed lives. But he did. Quietly, humbly, profoundly. What we can learn from Bob Denver's life. Bob Denver's story is rarely told with the depth it deserves. Most summaries reduce him to a simple comedic actor. But his life taught lessons far more powerful than any punchline. Every laugh he created was an offering to the world. Every smile, every silly stumble, every comedic accident, all of it came from a genuine desire to make people happy. His career was never about ego. It was about giving. And that is the rarest expression of art. A powerful ending, the man who saved 1 million childhoods. As we look back on Bob Denver's life, it becomes clear that he lived in two worlds. In one world, he was Gilligan, the man who tripped, fell, panicked, and made us laugh when life felt heavy. In the other world, he was Bob, the quiet protector of his family, the gentle advocate for children with disabilities, the humble soul who never saw himself as a star. And maybe, just maybe, that is why Gilligan mattered so much. The character wasn't brilliant, heroic, or strong. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't skilled. He wasn't wise. He was human. Lovable. Flawed. Trying his best. Just like the rest of us. Bob Denver didn't simply act Gilligan. He gave the world permission to laugh at its own imperfections. In a world where people feel pressure to be perfect, Bob reminded us that it's okay to stumble. It's okay to fail. It's okay to be human. His gift wasn't comedy. His gift was compassion dressed as comedy. And that is why, even though Bob Denver is gone, Gilligan will never be. Because somewhere, a child is watching. Somewhere, a family is laughing together. Somewhere, a lonely person finds comfort in the gentle innocence of a man in a sailor hat. And that is a legacy that only a few souls on earth are blessed to leave behind. Bob Denver didn't save the castaways. But he saved childhoods. He saved moments. He saved people. And that is the most extraordinary escape he ever made.